During the 19th century, following the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade, Cuba's booming sugar industry faced a severe labor shortage. To address this, Spanish colonial authorities turned to importing Chinese laborers, known as coolies, under an indentured labor system. Between 1847 and 1874, more than 125,000 Chinese workers were brought to Cuba, primarily from the impoverished regions of southern China. They were promised fair wages, decent working conditions, and the opportunity to return home after their 8-year contracts ended. However, these promises were rarely fulfilled. Upon arrival, Chinese laborers found themselves subjected to brutal conditions that often resembled slavery. The contracts, which they had been coerced into signing or misled about, bound them to exhausting work on sugar plantations, railroads, and other labor-intensive projects. Plantation overseers treated the coolies harshly, with punishments for not meeting work quotas that included beatings, solitary confinement, and even death. The long hours and harsh physical demands were coupled with inadequate food and deplorable living conditions, leading to high illness and mortality rates among the laborers. The Chinese coolies also faced social isolation. Language barriers and cultural differences made it difficult for them to integrate into Cuban society or seek help for the abuses they suffered. With little recourse to legal protection, they remained at the mercy of their employers, who saw them as expendable labor. Many coolies attempted to resist by escaping plantations, but Cuba's island geography and the vast network of plantations made freedom elusive. Those who managed to flee sometimes joined communities of Maroons, escaped African slaves, in remote areas, where they shared a common struggle against exploitation. Tensions also arose within the broader society as Cubans viewed the arrival of Chinese laborers with mixed feelings. Some local workers feared that the coolies' presence would drive down wages and diminish job opportunities, while abolitionists viewed the system as perpetuating a new form of slavery under a different name. For the colonial authorities, the influx of Chinese labor was seen as a means to keep the sugar economy afloat without African slaves, creating further divisions in Cuban society. The indenture system's exploitation sparked riots, uprisings, and legal battles. Chinese laborers staged revolts against abusive plantation conditions, with some uprisings turning violent, though most were suppressed by colonial forces. In 1874, the Chinese government finally pressured the Spanish authorities to end the coolie trade to Cuba, citing widespread abuse and human rights violations. Despite these hardships, some Chinese laborers found ways to establish a life in Cuba after their contracts ended. A number of coolies, unable or unwilling to return to China, settled in cities such as Havana and Santiago. They formed small communities, opened businesses, and married into local populations, contributing to a unique blend of Afro-Cuban and Chinese culture. Over time, a Chinese-Cuban identity emerged, and their descendants played a role in Cuba's cultural and social fabric. The story of Chinese coolies in 19th-century Cuba reflects a history of exploitation, resilience, and cultural transformation, as they overcame severe adversity to leave a lasting mark on the island's history. Their experiences highlighted the injustices of the indentured labor system and the human cost of sustaining Cuba's plantation economy. Today, Havana's Chinatown and Chinese-Cuban cultural traditions stand as testaments to their enduring legacy,